Good morning, friends. It's Bob again, bringing you yet another reflection on forgiveness and forgiving. Now, I want to put my cards on the table because I think it's important to kind of understand why we're doing this. I think that what ends up happening is with some of these more important, paramount kinds of truth of the Christian faith, what we do is we typically will visit them and we'll kind of put our toe in the water. The pastors will talk about it. We'll think, well, I did a sermon on that, and so therefore everybody gets that. The problem is that with some of these more consequential types of truths, what ends up happening is we just basically visit it and we move on. We visit it, we move on, and it doesn't really have a long-term impact on us because we only visit it. We don't actually abide there. We don't make it our home, and so it doesn't change us. And I think the whole point of this is that we change as a result of what's going on with God's forgiveness and our forgiving and how that whole thing works. And so therefore the Lord would tell us that we need to pray this on a daily basis. Forgive us as we forgive others, and those different kind of things. So here's my conviction on this is that we are immersing ourselves in this. And I've used this terminology and this word picture before of when you marinate meat, you put it into a bag or something, and you put the marinade in with the meat. And what the marinade does is it actually works chemically to break down the tough the enzymes in the marinade break down the tough tissues within the meat, and it actually changes the meat over time, but it takes time. So if you marinate something for 5 minutes, it's just kind of a glossy kind of surface type of a deal. But if you actually marinate it for 45 minutes or through 3 or 4 hours, then it has a very different impact on the meat. Same with forgiveness and forgiving, that you and I have this opportunity to immerse ourselves, to deep dive and to swim around in it, and for it to have its long-term impact on us. And so we're looking at it. And also another piece of this is that every time I talk about this, and I talk about it at least 2 times a year, but every time I talk about it, people bring up all kinds of questions, and they want to know, well, what about this, and what about that, and how do I do it, and how do forgiveness and reconciliation relate to each other, which is heavily they relate to each other. But in all this, what I think ends up happening is we pass by it rather than marinate in it. We think that we get beyond it, but we don't. And so I am spending the time doing this because I believe that the Lord is inviting us into this. And I want to ask you not to get impatient with this, because what will happen is, as I talk about this over and over and over again, sometimes you will get really frustrated with me and sometimes even frustrated with God. It's like, can you just leave me alone with this whole thing? And the Lord's like, I don't want to leave you in prison. I am not willing to leave you in prison, even if it's the prison that you set up for yourself with your own responses to the things that have happened to you. I am not content, the Lord says, to let you stay in bondage. And putting it straight, unforgiveness, bitterness, resentment is bondage. Even if it's self-proclaimed, self-inflicted, it's still bondage. And Jesus says, I want you out of that. And so we are investigating this. We are deep diving and immersing ourselves into this over time. And I'm not going to let up until I believe that the Lord has said, it's time for you to let up, that we've ostensibly got it. And one last thing, I'm going to talk about this Sunday about how to forgive. That's something that a lot of you have said is like, okay, Bob, but how do we forgive? How do we make this work? We're going to talk about that this Sunday. So thanks so much for joining me. That's the rationale behind what we're doing. I'm so glad that we are walking this together. Invite other people into this journey, because everybody needs this. I love you. I'm praying for you. Thanks for joining me. God bless you.